So,
Ooh,
okay. I'm gonna start letting people in and then we'll take it away from there and I'll ramble for a little bit. But cool.
are you gonna do the intro part and then
Yes,
introduce
yeah,
us?
I'll hand it over to you guys. So,
Perfect.
all right.
Thanks.
Are you nervous?
No, I just don't like.
Welcome everyone. Welcome. So many people adding. Good. As my dog welcomes people also. Hello everyone. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hey, Kelsey.
Hey, oh, hey friends. How's it going?
Good.
Good. Ignore my dog. He thinks that someone's at my door because I keep saying hello. He'll stop. Hello, everyone.
Hi, beautiful.
It's nice to see you guys.
You
You
too.
too. I don't know that you have ever seen us without each other, except, well, I guess you have her.
No,
Oh,
yeah,
that's right.
I've seen Laura at Business 101 classes.
We do function individually also.
Yeah, well, cool. We will just go ahead and launch into things. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I work for the Knoxville Entrepreneurs Center and the Maker City. I'm the communications director there. And so Anne is on vacation, a well-deserved vacation after the summit. And so I will be your host tonight. And so just a couple of housekeeping things before we get rolling. This is a maker meeting. We do these once a quarter. And it's just education. We try to find someone in the community that is an expert on some topics that we think that makers would enjoy hearing about. And today it is market applications. And so we'll hand it over to Shannon and Abby here in just a second. But if you haven't signed up for our newsletter here in a little bit, I'll be putting that in the chat to be able to do so. And I'll also add some of our upcoming events into the chat as well. And then at the end, we'll probably do a Q&A, and I'll help facilitate that alongside Shannon and Abby as well. But we also would ask that you stay muted this whole time, just because once there's several people on Zoom, it can get a little crazy. And but yeah, I think that that's about it. And so Shannon and Abby, I'll go ahead and pass the floor over to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelsey. Thanks for coming, everybody. And like Kelsey said, we'll have questions at the end, but if you want to ask any questions in the chat during the presentation, totally feel free to do that. And Kelsey, you can interrupt us and jump in so we don't have to go back and forth. That's totally fine. But we are presenting on maker market applications. So we decided to do it Chapel Roan themed because why not? We wanted it to be a little bit more fun. So you'll see a lot
Yes.
of Chapel throughout the
Mhm.
presentation and some examples from different things. Okay, well, first we're going to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about why we're leading this. My name's Shannon. Like Kelsey said, I'm the marketing and creative director for Dogwood Arts.
And I'm Abby Swabe. I'm a graphic designer and event coordinator for Dogwood Arts. And when I'm not at Dogwood Arts, I am also applying and participating in maker markets. I have my own illustration and like sticker business that I do on the side. So I'm bringing in sort of both sides of an application today.
Yeah, and if you're not super familiar with Dogwood Arts, we're a nonprofit here in Knoxville. We host a variety of different exhibitions and festivals, markets. So while we're talking about maker markets specifically today, I think a lot of the information is going to be really transferable to if you're applying to gallery exhibitions or different festivals like the Dogwood Arts Festival. So I think it's all really, transferable information that hopefully you get a lot out of.
Mhm.
So this kind of gives you a run through of what we're going to be looking at today. First, we'll start with, choosing the right market for you. We'll share some of our favorites, some of the big ones here in Knoxville. Next, we're going to talk about preparing the application, going through the whole process. We're going to spend a good amount of time on product photos because I will say that's probably arguably one of the most important parts of an application. We're going to talk about the acceptance and rejection process and then how to get feedback as a maker from event organizers in order to improve then on your next applications. Oop, wrong way. Sorry about that. Okay. So step one, taking time to search for the markets that are really a good fit for you. So, while some market applications may be right, we're going to talk about when to apply first. So, some market applications for smaller markets might be open really close to the market, but a lot of festivals, a lot of bigger markets, they're going to have their applications open a good 4 to 6 months prior to the event. So it takes a lot of pre-planning and kind of planning out your calendar for the whole year. One example is that we're currently accepting applications for the Dogwood Arts Festival. That event's not until the end of April. So that's more than 6 months from now. So we're already kind of planning for that. And same thing as you're planning for your markets, looking ahead that far can be really important. A lot of the really, good markets, high profile markets are getting booked up really quickly. So keep that in mind too. It takes a while to get a spot. There's, so many limitations to space in a lot of those bigger markets, especially if it's your first time participating.
Okay, so in saying that, not all markets are created equally. Making sure that your product is a good fit for the event that you want to apply for is really important, both for your success in getting accepted and then your success the day of at the market. For example, if you make a high-end product that might be considered more fine art than a craft, you might not want to waste your time on a craft show that caters more to a DIY crowd. And then vice versa, if you tie-dye vintage tees for $40, you may not want to apply for a show that's mainly focusing on fine artists with $3,000 oil paintings. Keep in mind that markets are seasonal, so it's important that if you're applying to markets all year round, that your product can also last all year round. For example, maybe you're a knitter. If you make just woolly winter scarves, you might want to think about having a more lightweight product for summer markets. And if you want to just stick with winter apparel, then just apply for winter shows so you're not feeling discouraged by not getting accepted into a summer show. Other factors you want to think about are indoor versus outdoor. How well will your product do in these environments? And I really recommend looking at competitors or artists that in your community that you admire and follow. What markets are they applying to? If you have a similar target audience and then they've had a great success at a particular show, that would be a good show for you to apply for with a similar target audience. So finding the right markets can be tricky, but luckily Knoxville has an abundance of markets and opportunities here. So this is just a short list of all of the markets a quick Google search finds. There's also Porterfley and Indie Craft Parade are two big ones in Nashville and Greenville. So these are all ones that lots of people attend every year. And then the Maker City is a great resource too. The makercity.org/markets is a whole list of upcoming markets locally in Knoxville.
Yeah, and I'll mention too on the choosing a market that's seasonally correct for you. We have a lot of vendors who participate in our events up until a certain point. So a lot of our candle makers, April is kind of the last month that they'll do outdoor shows. So it's kind of thinking about your product and applying for shows. If it's in the summer and your product might melt, maybe only apply for indoor shows versus those outdoor shows. Let's see. Okay, so step two of kind of choosing what market is right for you is actually visiting the market before you apply, if possible. This allows you to really ensure, get a feel for the customers that are there, ensure that your product is going to fit that audience, and just the market vibe itself is something that you're interested in participating. I mean, we've heard horror stories, and there's some of you on the Zoom today have gone to festivals for the first time, and you're like, oh man, I wish I had not applied to this festival and attended. So if you're able to go into the event first, I think is always a great thing to do, just so you don't, even if you get in, you don't have a good experience, you can kind of, skip that waste of time. Another pro tip and something that it makes a big difference for us is when you engage with the event organizer. So if you're attending these festivals or attending these markets and you can take a few minutes to go and introduce yourself to the people who are putting it on, I think that really immensely helps your chances of getting in. If your application isn't the first time that we're seeing your work or learning about you, that really helps put you, already a step ahead of the next person, the next competitor who's applying. It's going to help, event organizers become more familiar with your business. But it's also a great way to learn. I'd also recommend to making sure that you're following all of the festivals and different organizers that you're applying to, following them on social media.
Mhm.
That definitely makes a big difference for me when I'm looking at applications and going through. And if I, click through to your Instagram and I see that you're already following us, that shows me that you have a commitment to, to our show. You want to be involved in it. And also, if we're already following you, we're already aware of your work and want you to be a part of our event. So I think that's something that you wouldn't always necessarily consider, making sure you're following everybody already on social media or just going to the event first, but it's a really great pro tip if you can.
Mhm.
Let's see, get you some bonus points if we can see that you're really an active, participant in the
Yeah.
community as a whole. So after you kind of, decided, you've done your research, you've attended these events, you've talked to the organizers, you've, seen how they're advertising their shows, the different types of vendors that are involved in them. Now comes the actual preparing the application part, the hard part. And so I'll be honest, one of the hardest parts of being an event organizer is sometimes reviewing all of the applications. Sometimes we will receive upwards of four times the amount of applications than we can actually include. As an organization, Dogwood Arts received over 2,500 artist applications last year. We ended up about having just over 1,200 artists participate throughout the year. So, not quite half, but there's a lot of applications to go through, and sometimes it's hard to go through them all, and it's definitely hard to deny people, which is definitely not the most fun part of our job.
Yeah.
But really, the only thing standing between you and your dream market is that application. They're typically not very difficult or long to fill out, but there are a few things that can kind of quickly mess up your chances of getting accepted. So we're going to kind of go through how you can really increase your chances of being accepted with just a few easy steps as you're applying. So first thing, it seems pretty easy, but it's worth mentioning for sure. Just make sure your links work. So the majority of your applications are going to require either a link to your Instagram, to your website. So making sure that you're putting in the correct handle, no typos. If you're putting a live link, make sure it works. It's really frustrating as an event organizer to click on something and it not go to the right place, and having to kind of manually type in and figure that out for sometimes hundreds of artists can be really difficult. So just make sure that your links are typo free and everything works before you submit it. Make sure that your social media platforms, Instagram, your websites, your Etsy account, that are up to date and they're relevant. This is a biggie of an event organizer. Or a jury for a show is not going to have time to see your work in the flesh. They're viewing it online. So whatever platform that you direct them to in your application, it needs to have good, clear images of what you make. If an organizer is looking at your Instagram, but there's no pictures of your work, it's going to be really hard to accept your application. This is one of my biggest pet peeves when going through applications. It's more often than you think. People will include links to their personal Instagram accounts that don't really show any of their work. Which I love seeing pictures of people's dogs and things like that, but unless you're making bandanas for your dog and that's your craft, then it's not really relevant as an event organizer to see that. So just making sure, if it's not social media, if it's Etsy, or even if it's a landing page like a website, just having something that is really beautiful and showcases your work is really important. So number 3 is kind of keep it short, snappy, and relevant. So when you're writing your information about your business and your creations, keep it really short, keep it snappy. It's not a full resume, it's not a CV. So tell us, what you make, where you make it, include a short sentence or two that kind of describes why your business is better than a competitor's business and why we should choose you instead of them. I will say, I hate to say it, but it's incredibly important, this part, if you're a vendor who makes products like jewelry or candles or ceramics. You'll see later in the presentation, but we get so many applications from these type of vendors that it's really kind of like, splitting hairs to figure out which ones are going to be included in our events. So you really want to tell your brand story in a way that makes event organizers want to see more. One thing too, please, when you're if the application gives you space for it, when you're including descriptions for the photos that you're uploading. So sometimes we're looking at a tiny thumbnail of an image, and it's really hard to tell like what something's made out of or the different materials that are used. So the more you can give us on that front, it's really important. It helps us, go through and be like, oh, okay, well, this is made with this, and that makes it different from this other vendor, and so it's very, very critically important. It's also, I think, a good idea sometimes to cater to the kind of market that you're applying to. For example, if you're applying to a market that's an Earth Day themed or it's on Earth Day, including in your brand story about, sustainable practices that you're doing or how you're utilizing recycled materials, things like that, kind of catering your brand story to the types of events that you're applying to is really important. It's not always a copy and paste from festival to festival.
Okay, so next you want to make sure that you're bringing what you actually say you're going to bring. This seems really obvious, but you'd be surprised if you're describing a product in your application, but your Instagram or your website shows something completely different. It makes it very hard for us as organizers to determine whether we should accept you or not. Any good market is going to make sure that there's a good variety of vendors and not too much of one thing. A little direct competition is fine, but we wouldn't curate an old city market with 20 candle makers. No one would be having a good time there. So if you arrive at a market with something completely different than what you included in your application, you could be stepping on another maker's toes. You'll make your day and that competitor's day and the organizer's day much more difficult and much more unsatisfactory. And then at the end of the day, the organizers they might not accept you back again because they'll feel like they were tricked and fooled by the application you sent in. This is another reason to have really accurate description of your work, that snappy, relevant description Shannon was talking about. If you can describe your work and like a super great elevator pitch that sets you apart from another competitor and really describes what you're bringing, that will put you above someone who's very generic or lengthy in their description. The next you want to read, then reread, and I'm going to say reread it again, all the application info on the application page. Usually, if you have a question about the market, all that information will be included in the description on your application page. We get several calls and emails and questions about the event that we've already included on the application page. And we just simply don't have the time to answer all of these questions. And it's hard, we're busy putting the event on. We don't have time to answer questions that have already been answered. So people will show up with the wrong colored tent or no tent weights and any small details like an example is to make sure you're checking the load-in times and the details and dates of the event. If the load-in time has clearly been stated as like the day before these specific hours, make sure you're available those hours that day. We will occasionally get calls that's like, I had no idea load-in was the day before, I can't make it. And we're like, we've said this 500 times. So just make sure that you are reading all the details and have all of that recorded for yourself. Of course, market organizers are happy to help, but it reflects better on you if you've got that information in your brain already.
Yeah, it really helps us too as organizers if we know like, okay, this vendor had 100 questions last year and we might not accept you the next year just because of like that experience. So, making it as easy on you and the organizers will really kind of increase your chances of getting in again the next year for sure.
So this last one requires a bit more discussion. We're going to talk about product photography. So don't get scared. You don't need super fancy equipment, a professional photographer, or a huge product setup to make great photos. We got a few things. So just to like cover the basics, having high quality photos that clearly showcase your products and reflect who you are as a small business is crucial in this process and as being a small business yourself. You want photos that are dynamic, cohesive, and clearly display your products, and this will do wonders for your application. And one pro tip I want to include here is to make sure that you're including a photo of your booth setup or your display setup, even if it's not asked for specifically in the application. This will help the organizers visualize how you'll look in their space. So, photography is a huge piece of your brand presence. Good quality, high resolution images enhance your professional overall look and can be a powerful tool in supporting your brand story. Think about the people and brands that you love to follow that are on social media and wherever. As small business owners, imagery helps tell your story and communicate your level of investment in what you're offering. It shows people that you're taking this seriously. Blah, blah, blah. And all this will help to make a good application. So yeah, so these photos are an example of a simple product photography setup. Bright indirect light is the best. So by a window in like morning light when the sun's not beaming in your face, but it's sort of ambient. A white background is always preferred. And if your product is apparel or jewelry or something that is meant to be used, then maybe include a photo of it being used or on a model. That helps with scale and like it shows it like being used in everyday settings.
Yeah, and there's some links in the presentation too that we'll send out at the end that everybody can use. We, even at Dogwood, just purchased a really cheap light box. So when people are bringing in artwork for an exhibition, I can shoot it in the light box really easily and then use it for promotional purposes. As there's one in here for $21 for a small one. Even our bigger one, I think was only like 75. So
Yeah.
it is an investment, but it's definitely worth it. For your own social media and website, but also for your market applications as well. Okay, so I thought it might be interesting. I was thinking about it today and I was like, I bet a lot of, artists and makers have never really seen like the back end of like what we see as organizers when you apply to an event. So of course, it's gonna vary greatly depending on the event, depending on what platforms everybody uses. We use a variety of different platforms just in our organization. There's not one for every application. But this kind of shows you if you can see that okay. Kind of what we would see. This is one person's like field on the back end of our application. So we're looking at your most of the jury, is going to look at your photos and these little tiny thumbnails. And so having some really great, close-up shots, a few of your booth is really important. Especially, if we're looking through when we're kind of jurying through and there's hundreds and hundreds of applications, we're definitely not going through each one in the first round. We're using the thumbnails as kind of the first, like, okay, we're going to give them a ranking and then we're going to go through the top rankings for the second round. Of course, in like a second round view, this is kind of like we can click through and enlarge photos so we can see a little bit more of the detail. We can read about the product descriptions and things like that. But just keep in mind that first round is very, usually it's us looking at thumbnail images. So when things are, not, if they're really low res or if they're blurry or if it's dark, it's really hard for organizers to kind of choose you. Even if your work is great and it's not photographed well, it can get cut and lost in that first round. This is kind of a view of a bunch of applications in one. So this is kind of how we're looking at it on that first round. This was from our regional show last year. So I think we received like 400 entries for that. So, this is kind of our first look at all of them. And you can kind of get a sense for the different, things we're looking for there. So that might be interesting for everyone to see. I talked a little bit earlier about if you're a ceramicist or a jeweler, how many applications we get for those specifically. So this view is from the Dogwood Arts Festival last year. And you can see the green is the number of applications that were accepted. The red are ones that were juried out. And the blue are the alternates. So you can tell ceramics, jewelry, and painting were definitely the mediums that we get the most applications for. So it's critically important if you're in those categories to make sure that your images are really high quality, because that's the ones that we have the most of and we have
Yeah.
to go through the fastest. This was an example I thought was pretty good from a thumbnail perspective of someone's application. I did try to block out everybody's names just so, you know, their privacy, but this one was
Yeah.
good because I thought the pieces were well lit, it was bright, and it also showed her in her booth next to her product, so we could get kind of a sense of, what her pieces would look like at the event. So I thought that was a good example. These next two were from our Fragile Ceramic show last year. They were also, I thought, really well done. This was a show where you submitted one piece of work. So having like multiple, multiple perspectives and angles of your work, making sure they're really well lit. And then we could click through to get detail shots. This is an example of what not to do. One of the biggest kind of pet peeves is making sure that you're uploading the correct file types. So, the application should tell you, the preferred file types and file sizes that you need to do. So this person uploaded PDFs instead of JPEGs or PNGs. And so as an organizer, the only way for us to see that person's work is to click it, download the PDF, open it in a different application. And so a lot of people aren't going to spend the time to do that, so that person might just get totally cut in the first round only because they didn't upload the correct, file type, which can be really disappointing because you spent so much time on your application for it not even to be reviewed. The next one, I'm only including hers because she's a friend and I would tell it to her face, but it's a pet peeve of mine when it's totally fine to use like a sheet or a blanket as a backdrop, but just make sure you iron it, throw it in the dryer for a few minutes before. It can be super distracting as an organizer. It detracts from your work and it doesn't look professional. And so just a quick 1 minute on the iron will do wonders for your backdrops. So another thing that's great about having good product photography is that your work's also going to be, once you're juried into a show, you're way more likely to be featured on the organizer's social media the weeks leading up to the event. It's really just free promotion for yourself, for your business. And so this is an example of a friend. Their company is called Knox House Candle Company. So they applied to Rhinestone Fest here in the Old City, and it was as easy as throwing a couple disco balls in their product shots, and that got them featured on Rhinestone Fest Instagram leading up to the event. So, kind of tailoring your photos to you can't do this for every market, of course, if you're applying to hundreds, but if you're able to kind of tailor your product photography based on the event. So if it's Rhinestone Fest, this next example was, they were applying to the Sono Pride market. So, throwing a rainbow flag underneath their product or a rainbow in the background of the product shots, I think it definitely would have, caught the eye of the organizers, and they could see that the maker really cared about and had researched the event beforehand. And so that likely increased their chances of getting included as a vendor. I included just these other examples that I pulled like straight off their Instagram. It's just a really, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. I think just the hand holding the candle was great to show organizers like the size, the scale, even, your buyers, showing them like what they're buying if they're buying online. I think this is another place where doing research about other artists that you admire and that you follow, and like see how they're photographing their work. I know these guys with Knox House, they just bought a bunch of different colored poster boards. So all of these photos are just them sitting next to their window at their kitchen table and photographing with some natural light. They're not professional photographs, mostly done on their iPhone.
Yeah.
One thing, this is a little extreme case, but I think still really relevant. Having great product photography on your applications can get you even more promo outside of social media. So this is Dion, and she's on the call. Hi, Dion. She has a really amazing product photography, and so she was included as a vendor at the Dogwood Arts Festival last year, and we loved her product photography so much. She included, pieces that had dogwoods in them, so it really made sense for this event. And then we used it as our billboard campaign. So her work was featured, all across Knoxville, into Sevierville on billboards leading up to the event. So really great way to kind of get your name out there, outside of just on our social media. We also used her photography in our print ads in the Knoxville News Sentinel and the Maryville Daily Times. So it was really getting her product out there, even further, just because of uploading really good product photography to her application. This was an example of another artist, Flasher, who does great product photography that we were able, and they're uploaded really high res images. Sorry if you can hear that. There's a train behind our office.
Oh no.
But he uploaded really high res images of his work, and so we also were able to include those on the billboard campaign. This was a print ad in a local magazine. So anything like that, it can really just increase your promotion. This was the cover of the program for the Dogwood Arts Festival last year. So two of the artists who were chosen to vend, Valerie Pierce up there in the left-hand corner, and Alex Broussard Ceramics, both had great product photography. So we included them on the front of the program. We printed 10,000 copies of that to give out to all of the attendees. So just another way to kind of get their name out there. And it was all because they took that extra time to really make sure that their product photography was great on the front end.
And organizers will also we have a list of all the vendors that were accepted on our website. So you've got really good product photos that showcases better on the website when people are looking at who's actually attending the event.
Yeah, makes our job a lot easier too, because sometimes if the images uploaded to the application aren't great, we'll have to go and try to pull some off your website or pull some off your Instagram. And so it just makes it quicker and easier and a better experience on our end that will lead to a better likelihood for you to get in the following year.
So that's about it. Some very simple ways that you can improve your chances of a successful market application. However, following all these tips might not prove successful each and every time. Like we said, we get hundreds and hundreds of applications every year for Dogwood Arts Festival, and we can only select a limited number. That doesn't mean that your product is bad or that you're a bad artist. It just means that you weren't accepted this time. This part is always the hardest for us as organizers of markets and exhibitions like this. We wish we could include everyone. All the applications that we get, we're like, oh, that's so cool. Like, we love going through these applications because they're so wonderful. We just simply can't accept everyone. So there are a couple of reasons why you aren't accepted. If you don't get accepted, there's a couple of reasons why. There could be 50 printmakers applying and only enough spots for 3, which means 47 printmakers didn't get in. You could have the most incredible work, but it might be too similar to another maker, and it wouldn't be fair on either of you to have you both attend the event. Or your work might not be the right fit for the market and for the customer that the organizer knows will be there. These are just like a couple of reasons why.
One thing too is a question that we get asked a lot right after we send out, acceptance and rejection notifications for shows, are makers and artists requesting feedback. And we might not always have time to, provide a ton of specific feedback for every applicant, but it can never hurt to ask. So I would definitely recommend, especially if it's a show that you've been like really wanting to get into and you really tailored your application and you felt like everything was great. There's nothing wrong with requesting some feedback. And even if you might not get it right then because their organizer is busy with the event, they might come a little bit later. I would just encourage you to ask and always, try to improve going forward. I think, sometimes, especially if you're just starting out, if you're like just now getting into applying to markets, it can be really difficult to not be accepted to something. So again, just to reiterate everything we talked about, just really make sure that your images are great, that you have some type of online presence, whether that be social media, Etsy, or a website. All of that really increases your chances of getting accepted. And I will say, you might not, if you're starting out your business and you might not have, a full-blown Instagram account ready with all these great product photography, product shots, even just having a page that has one full scroll's worth of photos, so like 12 photos, 9 or 12 photos, is definitely better than nothing. We're not going to spend too much time scrolling way back on someone's Instagram anyway. So just having something that we can go to, and also something that we can direct our attendees to on the back end. So a lot of times, people will come to the festival, come to Dogwood Arts Festival, or come to an old city market, and then they'll reach out to us on social media and be like, "Oh my gosh, I found like the best ceramic artist, and I can't find them online. Can you help connect us with them?" And when that person doesn't have an online presence, it's really difficult, for us to be able to connect the artist with the person who really wants to purchase their work. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I want to take a moment to plug some of our things. So Dogwood Arts has an emerging maker program where we have an emerging maker tent at every Old City market in the fall and winter markets. So that's 2 makers in the tent that's like their very first market, and they're just coming into that marketing world. If you're just starting out, I think this is a great way to like get your feet wet, try it out without spending a bunch of money on expensive booth materials. Dogwood Arts Festival also has, we take over the amphitheater on Sunday of the festival for just emerging makers. Tennessee Craft also has a great emerging maker program. They're out of Nashville. And the Maker City also has lots of really good resources for, if it's not makers just starting out, it's resources that will help you in your small business just starting out. So.
Yeah, it can help you kind of get your foot in the door at least.
Yeah.
A lot of our emerging makers at Dogwood Arts Festival will then apply for the main lawn the next year. They just haven't done a full 3-day event before, and it's a big jump from a
Yeah.
1-day festival to a 3-day. I know several artists just went to like a week-long festival, so that's a whole different ball game of having enough product that lasts you the whole time and things like that outside of just a 1-day market. So I think a lot of these more emerging makers, even if you don't necessarily identify as an emerging maker, I think there's no harm in applying for them. It helps get your foot in the door, gets organizers to know your name, and gets, the audience to see you at least once and want you to come back the next year. We do have several, attendees who are like, "Oh, is this person going to be back this year?" And when we hear that a lot, we're like, "Okay, well, we need to make sure that this person has applied,
Yeah.
and that they're going to be with us the next year." So yeah,
that's all we have presentation wise.
We thought there'd be a lot of questions, so we wanted to save plenty of time for that. And we can scroll back through the presentation if you have questions about specific slides or anything like that. And if you want to just put them in the chat, I think that'll pop up for me, or Kelsey can.
Yeah, chat works great. Or if you want to unmute, but if you do choose to do that, just try your best not to interrupt anyone.
Sorry if we talked really fast.
No, that's great. And while people are kind of adding some questions to the chat, just a reminder, if you need to check in still, I added the link for that. And as well as the next 2 upcoming events, we have a resource fair in November and our holiday event in December. And so if you want to check those links out, that'd be great. I think we got some questions rolling in now.
For that first one, our emerging maker applications are totally separate from our main vendor applications. So we do that for a variety of reasons. One is that most of our like large festivals, you have to pay to apply. The emerging makers applications you normally don't. So that's kind of the reasoning in having 2 separate applications for that. Yes, we have a date for the 2025 Dogwood Arts Festival. It's April 25th through the 27th of 2025. It's always the last weekend in April. And we're looking for ways to kind of expand that emerging maker program as well. So right now, we do the Old City Market, we do the Dogwood Arts Festival, but we want to find ways to kind of keep that group engaged throughout the year. So, this year we sponsored anyone who participated with us last year as an emerging maker. We paid for them to go to the Maker City Summit to get those connections. So definitely Tennessee Craft has an amazing emerging maker program, and so we're kind of looking at theirs as inspiration for what we can do. Let's see.
So someone asked, someone who hasn't done any markets before ever, are there any you might suggest looking out for to try as a first timer? I would look at if it was me looking at it, I would look at what my peers are attending. So if I have a friend who's an artist that I really admire and they've been successful in specific shows, I would talk to them about what shows they're doing and I would apply to those. If you're like specifics, Old City Market is really great. They always have good success. There's the Old Severe Sunday Market, I think also does really well, and those are fairly I don't want
Frequent.
to, they're fairly, yeah, they're
Yeah.
very frequent. So you have a better chance of getting into one of those because they have several throughout the year. Um, if like a market is too intimidating, I would talk to, if you have, I would use your connections, use your sphere of influence to get into like, maybe it's a pop-up at a local coffee shop or at a store, or maybe it's a church group having a fall festival or a school or things like that. Like it doesn't have to be the Old City Market. There's several ways that you can use this experience and this application knowledge to showcase your work.
Yeah, I think definitely as a first timer looking for those events that happen really frequently. So versus like a once a year festival. If you're first getting started, looking for those opportunities that are happening monthly, because
Yeah.
also those organizers are constantly looking for new vendors because they don't want the same person to be at every single one, because then attendees will stop coming. Yes, we will add the link for our emerging. All of our applications are at dogwoodarts.com/applications. So you can kind of browse all of the open ones, and the emerging initiatives are on there. Oh yeah, businesses that might want pop-ups. So I've definitely noticed this in the old city here in Knoxville during First Friday. A lot of the restaurants, coffee shops will have, they might not have a huge space to display work, but they'll have like a featured artist for that one night. Definitely, like I think Awaken next door, Awaken Coffee does that. We also at Dogwood, we manage the Maker Exchange space on World's Fair Park. So we've started kind of showcasing artists in that space, like physically in that space. So doing artist in action nights where an artist will come and they'll be painting for people to come by and watch them paint or watch them, whatever it is they're doing. But then also, have a small selection of their work for sale. We've had really great success. We'll have, an artist in action on a really busy night. Maker Exchange is connected to the Marriott Hotel. So on a night that the hotel sold out and we have an artist who's creating down kind of in the lobby and having their work on display. You did a pop-up at the Hyatt.
Yeah, I did a pop-up at the Hyatt on Gay Street. And they like reached out to me because they said, we love your photos on Instagram. We like the work that you do. We're trying to do more First Friday things. So I actually set up in the lobby of the Hyatt for that one night and sold some stickers there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys saw, speaking of the Maker Exchange, someone had a question about what are you looking for in artists who show their work there?
Oh yeah. Okay. So Maker Exchange is kind of we see our gallery in the old city at Dogwood as more of a space for emerging regional artists who we might, pair with a more well-established artist. But most of the artists on display, at least in the curio at Maker Exchange, are already pretty established. They don't have gallery representation necessarily, but it's not as much emerging makers in the curio space. However, we do have the grid wall over there as well, where there's 6x6 squares that about 150 artists, local artists have created. So we're always looking for new people to create those squares. Everything at Maker Exchange is sold on commission, so people buy it, we pay you for it.
Yeah. That's an application process too. There's no deadline for it. It's sort of a rolling application. Raina she's on staff here. She manages all the Maker Exchange things. Whenever a piece sells, she'll look for a new piece to replace it with.
Yeah.
So that's like if you have a finished piece that you think would look good in the space or would work well in that space, you can always put in an application for that piece and send it to Raina to take a look at.
And we're working on it. We don't currently have a ton of space for two-dimensional work at Maker Exchange. A lot of it's kind of in, cabinets.
Yeah.
But we are expanding that as our mural walls get covered. We'll have more work or more space for two-dimensional work as well. There's the application page for you.
There it is. Amazing.
I'll type in our contact But if you guys have questions that you would rather just email,
Yeah.
we're happy to answer. We're also We've also like helped artists through filling out applications. So if it's your first time like filling something out and you want to, come in and
Yeah.
like have us look things over or, work through it with you, we're happy to do that. And then I think, anyone at the Maker City and KEC is always open to kind of helping out. And I know sometimes just writing about your work can be so intimidating and you're
Yeah.
like, it's kind of hard to like hype yourself up,
Yeah.
or you don't want to feel like you're bragging, but you really have to.
I hate writing about myself. It's the worst thing ever. So I always have like a friend proofread it for me just to be like, does any of this make sense?
Yeah. Oh, Dion asked if we had any resources for merchandising market booths. I don't have any right off the top of my head that I can share on here, but one thing I meant to mention earlier too, I think it makes a big difference for organizers for events that are more like themed events. So like Rhinestone Fest, for example, the artists and the makers who really decked out their booth and like got a sparkly tablecloth or leaned into the theme of Dolly Parton, cowboy hats or whatever it is. I think there was one artist who had little like she was selling succulents in ceramic pots and like all of them had little pink cowboy hats on. So figuring out what the market theme is and really playing into that, I think it makes an impression on the organizers and they're like, oh, we got to have that person back next year. Same thing if you're doing like a pride market, like, making it more fun than if you're doing just kind of a fine art festival where it might not make sense to have a lot of, extra stuff. Because you don't, at the end of the day, want to take away from your work. It's just kind of adding that thing to it that makes someone want to come in. Because that's half the battle is just getting attendees to walk into your tent and really engage with your work. So having something fun that can kind of pull them in, even though they might not be looking for your type of product, is definitely helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Like lean into what makes your product unique and special. And I think that if you're having fun doing it, people see that and are more likely to come visit.
Yeah. And keeping in mind with merchandising, most of our markets are outdoor markets, and so there's always weather, and especially in April in East Tennessee. And so making sure as you're merchandising and buying things for that, that they're going to work for those type of markets, especially Dion with your really fragile ceramic work. It can get windy, so making sure the things in your booth can kind of withstand those conditions,
Yeah.
or that you have proper weights, things like that. All of Abby's products are paper products. If it rains,
It's
it's
a nightmare.
a nightmare. So making sure everything's really properly packaged before your market is important.
Yeah.
One random thing I didn't mention earlier too, a lot of markets will have we need at least like 70% of your work to not be prints, and have like the other 30% is fine to be prints. But just keep that in mind when you're looking at applications. Some markets are more strict on that than others, in terms of like they want originals and not prints. And so making sure that you just follow those rules, because that will definitely get you kind of cut from the next year if you don't follow those.
Y'all, I had a question. So as makers continue to grow and grow their businesses, they might be looking to expand into other cities or other festivals beyond Knoxville. And since you all work with a lot of artists across the country, I was wanting to know, are there any tips? Do you have people that reach out to you from other states and introduce themselves? Like, what have you seen for people that are kind of pitching to places that aren't exactly their hometown?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing we use Zap, it's called Zapplication. So if you're doing a lot of festivals like the Dogwood Arts Festival that are like multiple days in bigger cities, I would definitely check out that website. It's just zapplication.com. It's free to create an artist account. So you basically create your profile, you upload your photos to it, and then whenever you're like browsing this different cities that you want to go and vend in, you can just kind of, it's easy to apply because you've already kind of uploaded everything to your profile. Um, I'm not sure about, it's hard because, one of our recommendations for local markets is to attend those, but obviously you're not going to be able to attend every market if you're applying all over the country.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. I'm trying to think of.
I know a lot of artists that do that, they will spend like their whole summer season traveling across the country doing those markets. So like if they live in Michigan, they'll do a fair in Michigan, they'll go down to a different state, do one there, come down to Knoxville and do ours, and then head, like they make a big road trip. So I know a lot of them do that as they're planning things out. I would say if you want to as cheesy as it sounds, make specific work for that location in your application. If you're wanting to do something in North Carolina, make some North Carolina stuff for that. Or I would look at their website and I would talk to your friends, like your artist friends. Maybe they have experience that they could share with you. Or if you have friends that like I have a friend that lives in North Carolina, so I was able to go visit her and use that excuse to like go to an indie craft parade and check that out and then get more experience on what they're wanting. Definitely check out that organization's social media and their website. What kind of products are they accepting? What kind of other things are happening at that event? I think that will really inform you on how you should approach them approach them when you're applying. And then you can follow them and you can they'll see that you follow them and are like interested in that.
I was gonna say that's probably the easiest thing to do is just follow them. I know I had one vendor who was she was moving to Knoxville like in like 6 or 8 months,
Yeah.
and she like followed us on Instagram, sent us a DM. I was like, I'm moving to Knoxville. I'm so excited. Asked us for resources. So we directed her to the Maker City website to make sure she had a profile on there before she got here. So, I mean, that seems really simple, but I think it's really effective of just reaching out. Especially a lot of the smaller markets, like the organizers and the people running the organizers, the people running the Instagram account, and the people during it are probably the same person. So it definitely can't help to reach out, send a DM, as silly as that might sound.
Yeah.
Let's see. I need help because my booth is on demand photos with live scene background, or an actual moon or AI.
Like how to market it.
Are you, or sorry, is the question like if you have like photography, how to market it? I'm trying
I
to.
think it's important, yeah, further clarification, but I think it's important to really narrow, like when people say niche down your product, I think it's really important when you're making your elevator pitch, if you will, that you're telling the story of yourself in a way that it's easy for people to understand what you're selling.
Oh,
So
wait, I think I understand.
Yeah.
You're taking photos at the event, right? You're like having someone come into your booth and taking a photo with it. Okay.
Yep.
So that type of vendor, at least for our festival, would be a totally different application. It would be more of like an artist engagement. We have
Yeah.
like artist in action at the event. So it might not be in the traditional, like in line with all of the other like fine art booths, but we definitely like we want engagements and interactions like that. So sometimes it might just be figuring out which application is right. And I would just for that in particular email the organizer first and say like, hey, is this the right application that I should fill out, or is there
Yeah.
another one? Sometimes for us it's easy on certain platforms to just move people from like, oh, they applied to the fine art fair, but they're better suited in the maker market. So we can just, move their application over, but not everyone can do that. So they might just deny you and you just didn't know you should have applied to the general vendor form instead of the fine art form or whatever it is. So I would reach out, explain what you're trying to do at the event first to the organizer before you apply in that. Hope that made sense.
Hopefully that helps.
Do we have any more questions from the group?
I would say for that, at least for our event, you would fill out, we have just a general vendor form. And that's anything from like caricature artists, henna artists, things that attendees can actually take part in and do. If it's something like you're taking a photograph of them that they can take home or whatever it is, it would be more of an interactive piece than like a normal fine art or maker booth.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, last call for questions if anyone has any. Shannon and Abby put their contact information in the chat. I'll add mine as well. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming. And as always, if anyone has any questions or needs any help, please come by the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center or reach out to the Maker City. We would love to just talk with you more about where you're at with your business, what your goals are, and if you have any specific questions about applications. I know that Shannon and Abby wouldn't mind an email coming over their way. So yeah, like I said, we have some events coming up. November, we have the resource fair. So that's going to be sharing just a ton of resources from all over Knoxville and beyond for makers and creatives in the area. So definitely check that out on our website. But yeah, thanks for spending the night with us, you guys. Thanks so much.
I would definitely recommend going to the resource fair. It's probably like one of the best events
Yeah.
throughout the year because it's
We'll
like,
be there.
yeah, we'll be there. It's like every arts and culture organization that's hosting events just like this will be there. So it's a really good place to like get all your
We're
questions
already
answered.
signed up. Hey, thanks, guys. This was really,
So
really
fun.
informative. We
Yeah.
appreciate you, all
Yeah.
three of you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
See y'all
You too.
soon.
Good night. Bye.
Thanks, Shannon and Abby. Woo.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.